Hello, New Yorkers, hear me live. I was in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers. And when there's protests, in other words, since founding, right where everyone's mad to an extent with the same blaming syntax, language. So you guys are keeping blamed on other things, others and ourselves, what nature has been demonstrating and is demonstrating increasingly to us. To blame on the breaching method, a human fact treatment nature, predicate acts with facts method, the treatments of President Trump, President Biden, President Obama, and those before them, the differences between the party, a archetypal criminal enterprise. I'm not even a lawyer. All names on the Ninth Circuit Court, all names on all sides of that case. In the Ninth Circuit case in the Ninth Circuit Court in the World Trade Center attack context. The court right next to the World Trade Center. Leading up to the attack, a whole bunch of ways long term. Names that had roles with all sides, who have roles of planting evidence on all sides of my house and other people's houses. As the ones involved with the schools, planting evidence at the schools and live progressions. I call them with the principal child abuser. This is where the police forms. They're torturing and hurting Donald Trump to keep him. And President Obama, they torture hurt him sickly distinctly to keep measuring and maintaining how both of them and everyone else blamed on other things other than themselves what the breaching method is, because they don't have help. All locations, areas, and states, everywhere the species body is, has formal identities of the law, has regular people that they're distinctly, non-distinctly shown simultaneously by the hyper-simultaneous to blame. There's observable, self-valued, criminally foreign influenced use/s of databases relativity to names and names uses with logic. Since semi-ancient times, you guys left out that fact. Obviously, the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, and they could no longer afford. There are proofs they could no longer afford to have discerned the nature that English was revealed to be teach about. For example, with the predicate and the Predicate Act, while they are in demonstration of hyper additional, totally distinct things, they are at the same time in demonstration of the same thing, /s, which is the identity of hyperrelativity, its identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. With any subject we could perceive accurately, finite, individual, grouped, active, and progressive. But per its system, we're supposed to know about the other seasons coming before they come. We're supposed to understand this as part of where and how it shows us any subject we could conceive, individually grouped, or all the subjects we could handle at once, simultaneously. They come with what is not that, but is it, while it is it, anyway. And we could ignore, for example, it's this system that will only be. We could be other systems, but it forces a special difference from here. As Earth's a special difference, but we are Earth's a special difference distinctly. So, but this is self-valued, not just for the known reasons, like, oh, get the higher ground, go to space, and war. You guys never spoke about war properly. You guys blamed on other things, others, and or on selves, the causes of slavery. This would have been discovered had mass, formal, evidence reception and communications, names, private ones, and overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And then all these countries individually grouped in together. There had been roles with slavery entrenched before America's founders were even born. The design of the suburbs houses, the houses in the suburbs, the lawns, how like a landscape theater, the facades, the scale of infrastructure, the nature, the ground's identity, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that only increasing. Also, hyper additional, where we were each of the we are the voice slash S of important nature. So, but we have taken it again from its system that is also positive onto itself. No, not positive as criminal insidiousness. See, people would have logic, leaving out the breaching method and say, well, what can we do about that? In other words, there's a difference. This breaching method knew people would have to be like that. This breaching method knew that they would value more and more what they didn't want because they would hurt them more and more. They knew too instinctively. Roles with self-valuing only means to cause positive value nature progressions acts in natures more and more. It's the self-value roles with the breaching methods, criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police, I'm not criminal. The hyper-evidential shows all sides of criminal and civil cases and the news and the intelligence names, as even judges, their families, members, prosecutors, their family members, as Connecticut too, intercities, interstates, and international groups, and then further because there are hyper criminal foreign influences that are generated by one. If it's not just a self-value identity, it's more than just a self-value identity of negative identity of relationship to itself as the volume science we are as individual, group, different slash S, and species volume slash S, the species body of individual bodies. See, the ancients revealed as nature shows, more probably. See, we can use nature, we can use the hyper evidential, but the nature of the debate has remained confined to criminally foreign influence use slash S of roles with this breaching method, with people's logic, and with databases from before computers. And while hyper additional motivations and apparent, and even the real one, more and more it needs real motivation, syntax, and people to pretend those motivations for itself. In other words, and this is relative because a breaching method has a scientific value, not calling it a criminal enterprise. I mean, a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. But nature shows means and needs to label a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that, and to show countries A through Z that they could admit simultaneously having been and being tortured, extorted, in fact, treating nature enslaved by a semi-ancient, what we were taught to refer to as ancient, but we're going to refer to it as a semi-ancient, hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise that made forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded the names of the people, the sciences, to value also the names of the sciences abridged. Therefore, in defenses of that, increasingly incapable of allowing discern what it's increasingly in demonstration of, which the ancients couldn't believe we would forget this because that's how you cause evolution's fruits, gifts, and means out of nowhere, including especially regarding where and how we are fact treating nature. You have to understand before any modern leader came to power, per their definition of power, which is we're going to go beyond this stuff. No, it's the same way, but we're going to appreciate, for example, positive and negative with a quality of fact-keeping nature that is capable of not looking away from the predicate acts with facts method /S roles that has other things, others, ourselves blamed for where and how. Why and how, the answer to why and how we have black pupils and white divided simultaneously, and how that is left out. The answer is not prejudice. The answer was hyper criminal foreign influences that knew when we weren't blaming, if we weren't blaming other things or others, ourselves. In other words, you have to keep that, and or would have to have it sensed through our own. So it uses all difference /S and the phenomenon of where and how we are hyper additionally voicing /S as what we are not, as the earth and its other species bodies, but we are it anyway, one way. We're supposed to, we're supposed to explain and understand where and how and why torture, extortion, and fact-keeping nature, slavery forced the wars, like the Civil War, and where and how there's a quality of fact-keeping nature. The South, North and South both had collusion /S with the breaching method, and still do, keeping what it caused, blamed on other things, others, and or on themselves, and pretending other. They get away with this by pretending that the Constitutional Convention had meaning /S that it doesn't, leaving out how they had to be counter-extorted at 13 locations. And they had to have a plan to do that before before they then went and got George Washington, who agreed to help them with that plan. And they agreed to be the face of James Madison for us to describe it. The founders behind James Madison, they agreed to his plan. And then they went to get George Washington to agree. He agreed, and then they extorted at 13 locations to force the first 13 colonies, to force the first 13 states, but they're in more than 13 colonies. But they had to leave slavery entrenched because they were all sickly, distinctly tortured, extorted, and fact-keeping nature enslaved. They're therefore physically enslaved. And that had been sustained since before they were born against humanity. So if people weren't in collusion /S with quality aspects in nature propagated this way, they would be they would be sensed through their own, because this breaching method again exploits how we are our own body's names, but we're also the names of the other things, like the nature. All the words, names, share that, which cannot be, doesn't want to be named. I mean, we're not supposed to name, we're supposed to discern what is inseparable from each subject, individually grouped and together, and how actually. Vaccines. I teach those things, but alone. So in other words, WFSB is a Connecticut news location. They're in the process of recording, confessing, demonstrating, and confirming. While they're extorting you, they pretend other too. But they attach me to fake communications with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack, when I caught them involved with digital child abusers who are also involved with more recorded medical and other corruption with them. There's a Leahy family has roles with upskirt pictures of kids on Twitter, people with the FBI associated with them, with the name Ian, and with Hartford Hospital with judges involved with it, and female judges at New Britain Superior Court, Connecticut's District Court, and Hartford Court, their family members have roles of people known involved with that, and they were planting evidences with roles with that, and leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. As ones involved along the course, they brought up their roles with the principal child abuser. It's also people associated with Joshua Stryker, who has been lying about himself and others and tying me to fake locations. They try to get me to try to make a fake exception of me, knowing them at Eric Oliveri's house. He wanted me to sell drugs through UPS with them, and others involved with that, and put themselves to proving. Had all these sexual roles with the intelligence community at CCSU. These are foreign and domestic military too, planting fake behavior racketeering, fake motivations, roles with uses of words like attack to hide the sequence shifts. After the World Trade Center attack, it was proven from inside the Ninth Circuit Court. Legal papers that have been presented to the court had been post-dated from inside the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack to appear late to the panel of judges. But that was proven after the attack that they had done that. The same people involved with that had been involved with in the narratives where the intelligence community plants fake evidences because they are shown needs to hide lie progression, and where and how the breaching method uses all natures of investigators and their campuses and the names next to everyone, all conjunctions and adjacents and the difference of that, where and how that quality of fact-keeping nature is forced, and where how they get away with pretending to be against crimes, the people involved with it too. They have roles of predicate acts with facts, methods, way worse than what they have been putting kids in jails for and adults. And their roles with the kids and adults and the difference of that. These are people out of the state corrections offices and out of the state judicial branch offices who have roles with criminally foreign influenced readings of of evidence and of American history. And so this is part of the way they get away with this is because on a mass scale, they've been attaching people to fake communications with others. So, and you have experts on things like delusions. They're gonna learn because I'm gonna teach you guys about this using nature itself. They're having fake conversations with me with the Leahy family. They also with the news with more offenders of kids, sexual, medical, and legal at the same time, and their kids at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. As the ones involved with there's a Brian Silver, and there are people along a whole bunch of people tied to a Debbie Gold, and to kids who had conversations with their teachers behind other kids' backs, and they're attaching other kids to fake locations, fake ties, and fake natures of ties to themselves and others, with as collusions as with the ones with various natures of federal criminals before they got caught, and since still being forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to hide worse because there are more names involved. They're keeping the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures blamed on other things, others, and or on selves for a breaching method. We were supposed to blame slavery on that breaching method. Now I'm telling you, we should blame it on a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. But what they do, so they're not telling us to charge against the president. And they're not telling us the reason why, honestly. One of the reasons why, obviously, they don't even realize, but to an extent, on a mass scale, for themselves, they use and have used their own roles with little tricks. Like there are judges and prosecutors in private and foreign, a whole bunch of different countries are involved with a Brian Silver and people who went to my grammar school, who pretend prep, who have roles of behavior racketeering, where I only have good feelings about the people I went to school with, and where there were exceptions, they you don't know their names. Like there were people that would be mean things or do what they call bullying because they're the intelligence community is making fake communications between kids and their family members and kids and the police into databases. Then they have to hide live progressions. Has something to do with their roles, all kinds of scams, with all kinds of natures of things, critical and not, originally and still. And all those motivations, those truths, like, oh, it's about money. You gotta leave you guys are using that truths for lies. Because the breaching method assigned that. Otherwise, to be sentenced by people are going to speak. In other words, you guys don't follow mandated law. Shouldn't have to beg Fox News, WFSB, and WTNH. See, I didn't call WTNH on the phone. So if there's any pretended communications between me and WTNH on the phone, they have roles with people that had with the intelligence community, with the family members of judges and prosecutors, and people with the FBI and state police, as ones involved interstates with state police, foreign and domestic military police, people on and off shipping locations, UPS recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with the Oliveri family, intercities, planting evidences with people on off the state corrections offices, on the state judicial branch offices, and they're associated with the House right before the bridge in Weathersfield at that corner on Route 3, right past the state judicial branch offices. No. What Weathersfield Police Pizza also was involved with wire crimes with the police, the intelligence community, and people on off the state judicial branch offices and conjunctions and adjacents to it. That's in Weathersfield. Now, these are also people involved with Central Connecticut State University planting evidences, identity theft, fraud, slanders that are simultaneously federal evidences crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes, and roles with the people on my street with wire crimes with the Weathersfield police since they were kids. There are people associated with them who gave depositions about the police planting evidences. These are the ones leading up, and their extended family members, the ones they said it was their cousins, the ones with the name Scalora, Weathersfield Police, and recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Scalora is one of the ones involved with them. And Heather Hansen and Joe DeMauro and Elena Davenport and people with the name, people associated with the name Pruzzi at Central Connecticut State University and the name, I don't know what they told Miss Hicks and her. It might have been her kid. I don't know. They have people associated with the name Hicks. I don't know if it's a Hope Hicks tied, but I know that there's also all kinds of ties to judges and prosecutors who were planting evidences with kids from private schools and public schools that I don't know at all that went out of their way to make it look like other. By using the phenomenon of a field being across the street from my house. And these are also with Joshua Julian. I never saw him on my street in my life. I never saw him on campus in my life. I saw him online. I had heard his name repeated to me. He's one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Predicate Acts with the principal child abusers campus. And with more digital child abusers, with federal evidences, crimes with little kids and child offenders. He had roles with the principal child abuser before he got caught on his Facebook page. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with some KKK, Confederate flag themed and black themed military that are interstates. You fear God, get on papers because they get them out of but you're gonna speak for logic. With the courts, you guys got sick people putting fake conversations with kids and their families and with doctors. This lady family pretended to have conversations with me. Now there's a Judge Killian, but there's ones before him, and they have their family members involved and where they live. These are people who rolls with untimely deaths. And that brought up the conversation with his Dillon family. A whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have roles with the Cololo family, with wire crimes, Weathersfield police refusing to identify themselves, forging and switching names, as the ones on all sides of the Ninth Circuit Court in other cases, planting evidences, roles using the investigators remotely. These are roles with the houses and the businesses and overt criminal enterprises next to Hartford Hospital too. So if you're undercover or what you're doing with them, you messed up since founding, because you can't speak for culture too, by the way. You're using your difference /S interbranch exactly the intelligence, exactly the way the breaching method one needs to keep blaming the other things, other themselves, with the breaching method caused, which is that to all natural differences to speak other than they do naturally, what they're naturally about. And this is recorded. We would have revealed this. You guys have readings of history that are tactically delusions rock, criminally foreign influence as collusion /S. So anyone with short words properly, with theory or with theory, with the nature proper, more proper, let alone convictions with nature proper, that be sensed through our own, individually grouped and together. Exactly opposite from what our founders communicated. If you pay attention to how our founders had to counter-extort other founders and give everyone fake narratives, because the breaching method was sentencing everyone. It was using remotely also tortured, extorted, in fact, human nature enslaved all groupings of humanity, because it knew those groupings would have to be voicings, and it knew that they wouldn't be able to speak. I'll whisper Greek. See President /Chief as 3 volumes. So they're covering up sequence shifts and mass evidence is planted, because they had to, as a certain type of victim /hyper victim that forgiveness is critical for. But this is about how everyone is back to this child abused, the formal identities of the law in New York City. But New York City has roles with the campuses, with names that are involved, with corners of streets near me, with people, I don't know their names, I know my name, like tied to a Kevin Dillon, and a guy who said it was his partner. His roles all along the Berlin Turnpike, all along Route 3, all along Route 175, as their roles leading up to the World Trade Center in their context and next to it. And then it doesn't matter who knows what, in other words. That's why we have to get them on paper. In other words, they were used remotely. You guys are leaving out all that's there. And these are the ones on off the campuses, intercities, planting people's island, planting evidences, tying to the cities. So they bring up a whole bunch of subjects at once. On a mass scale, they pretend people say, "Oh, everyone's they were having conversations." They pretend I had conversations with people, and I say everyone was evil. They pretended through the mail they had conversations with me. Pretend I had conversations with doctors when I was a kid. That weren't at all. And as an adult, same ones with judges and their family members. Wire crimes with the same house /S involved with the untimely deaths with them.